Mark stood in the driveway, wiping sweat from his brow as he tightened the last bolt on the new basketball hoop. His 10-year-old son, Joey, bounced on his toes, barely able to contain his excitement. Since Joey's mom passed, Mark had done everything he could to keep life bright and fun. The basketball hoop was a birthday surprise, a way for father and son to bond and escape the weight of grief. That evening, they played their first game under the soft glow of the porch light. Laughter and the rhythmic bounce of the ball echoed through the cul-de-sac. For Mark, it was a moment of triumph, seeing Joey smile so wide. But behind closed curtains, other eyes were watching and listening. 2 days later, a folded note was shoved into Mark's mailbox. It was from the Homeowners Association, HOA, citing a violation of noise regulations and ordering the removal of the basketball hoop. Mark read it twice, disbelief turning into frustration. The letter was signed by Karen Whitmore, the HOA president, known for her strict enforcement of rules. Joey's face fell when Mark told him. "But it's not fair. We only play a little bit after dinner," he protested. Mark hugged him tightly, hiding his own anger. The hoop was more than just a toy. It was a symbol of hope. He wasn't ready to give up. That night, Mark stared at the ceiling, his thoughts spinning. Then, an idea sparked. If noise was the issue during the day, what about the dead of night? He leaned over to Joey's bed. "How would you like to play? After bedtime?" Joey's eyes lit up with mischief. At midnight, Mark and Joey crept outside with a flashlight and the basketball. The neighborhood was still and quiet. Their laughter was hushed, but the joy was real. It felt like their secret, a rebellion in the dark. Over the next week, the midnight games continued. Mark kept the sessions short and quiet. But curiosity brews in silent places. One night, a neighbor peeked through their blinds, drawn by the faint thud-thud of a basketball. The next night, that same neighbor joined in. A teenager from down the street brought his own ball. Soon, Mark's driveway became a haven for those seeking a little fun outside the HOA's strict bounds. Word spread in hushed tones, like an underground club. By the end of the second week, nearly a dozen people gathered each night. Mark started organizing small teams and even kept score. They called themselves the Midnight League. Everyone knew to keep it quiet. No loud shouts, no banging the backboard. Despite the rules, one boy stood out. Owen Whitmore, the HOA president's son. He was fast, loud, and had a booming laugh. Everyone liked Owen, even if he didn't quite understand the quiet part. Mark winced every time his slam dunks echoed through the cul-de-sac. It was bound to happen. One night, a light flicked on in the Whitmore house. The front door cracked open. Mark held his breath. But it was only Owen, sneaking out with a basketball tucked under his arm. "Told you I'd come," he whispered. Owen's presence was a risk. If Karen ever found out, the midnight games would be over. But Mark couldn't say no, especially since Owen was Joey's new best teammate. "Just try to keep it down," Mark warned. Owen nodded but grinned wide. Karen Whitmore didn't rise to power in the HOA by being naive. She began noticing odd things: muddy footprints at dawn, scuffed driveways, and her son sleeping more than usual. One morning, she found a basketball under his bed. She questioned Owen, who fumbled with excuses about early morning jogs. Her instincts told her something was up. She started keeping an eye out, walking her dog late at night, and peeking through blinds. But the Midnight League was careful, always one step ahead. One night, Karen's porch light flicked on mid-game. The players scattered like mice. Mark grabbed Joey's hand, ducking behind a car. Owen didn't run. He froze like a deer. Karen stepped out, calling his name. Mark whispered urgently, "Go." Owen bolted, pretending to be out for a jog. "Just getting some air, Mom," he called. Karen narrowed her eyes, but said nothing. That night, Mark held a meeting. "We have to be more careful, or it's over." Everyone nodded, but the tension was rising. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting. "There's been suspicious activity late at night," she announced. "I suspect it's related to that basketball hoop violation." Neighbors exchanged glances. Some stayed silent. Others shifted uncomfortably. Mark stood. Karen, if people are playing, maybe it's because the rules are too strict. That hoop brought joy to this neighborhood. Karen shot back, and noise complaints. The room buzzed with quiet dissent. But the motion passed. A curfew on outdoor activity after 9 p.m. The Midnight League was at risk. The new rule was a dagger. Mark considered stopping the games altogether. But Joey begged. It's the only time we get to play. Mark sighed, then nodded. Okay, but we go even quieter. The next game was nearly silent. Players whispered, shoes muffled by socks, and even Owen restrained his exuberance. It felt like a secret ritual. Mark realized they weren't just playing. They were creating something special. A community bound by shared rebellion. It was Owen's idea, a tournament. Just one night, he said. Championship style. Mark hesitated, then agreed. Flyers, disguised as doodles, were passed at school and slipped under doors. That Friday night, the driveway was packed. Teams formed. A bracket was drawn in chalk. Joey's team made it to the final against Owen's. The game was tight, the crowd tense. Then, Joey landed a three-pointer at the buzzer. Cheers erupted. Lights turned on across the street. Karen appeared at her window. Karen stormed across the street in her robe. The crowd froze. What is going on here? She demanded. Owen stepped forward. It was me. I organized it. Mark helped. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. Her son had defied her, but she saw the joy in his eyes. Everyone go home, she said quietly. As the crowd dispersed, she turned to Mark. We'll talk tomorrow. The next morning, Mark met Karen on her porch. She was calm but firm. You broke the rules. I know, Mark replied. But maybe the rules are broken. They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Karen spoke. My son hasn't smiled like that in months. Mark suggested a compromise, designated basketball hours, with sound buffers. You can even require supervision, he added. Karen mulled it over. And Owen? She asked. He gets to keep playing, same as Joey, Mark promised. Karen sighed. Let me take it to the board. The next HOA meeting was packed. Karen presented Mark's proposal. It's time we support our kids, she said. After much debate, the vote passed, but with one amendment. Owen, as the HOA president's son, would get first pick in every game. The room laughed. Mark grinned. Deal. For the first time in weeks, the neighborhood gathered in daylight. Music played. Parents brought snacks. Kids played openly. The basketball hoop, once a symbol of rebellion, now stood for unity. Mark and Joey played side by side, no longer hiding in the shadows. Owen was louder than ever, but this time, no one minded. The HOA voted to make the basketball hoop a permanent fixture. Mark even painted lines on the driveway. Midnight League Court, the sign read. Karen unveiled it herself. This is for the kids, she said. Applause followed. Joey hugged Mark tight. Best birthday ever. With the games out in the open, neighbors who had never spoken began chatting, cheering, and organizing events. The court became a gathering spot. Even adults joined in. Dads versus kids, moms versus teens. Laughter echoed, not complaints. The cul-de-sac was alive again. Though they no longer needed to play in secret, the Midnight League still held an annual midnight tournament. It became tradition, a nod to their rebellious roots. Mark, now considered the unofficial coach, handed out glow-in-the-dark jerseys. Joey wore his proudly. We made something cool, huh, Dad? Years later, Joey stood at the same hoop, now rusted at the edges. He was home from college, showing his little cousin how to shoot. We started this at midnight, he said, smiling. Mark watched from the porch, heart full. The game had started in shadows, but ended in sunshine. And the laughter, It never really stopped.